around the native bee in Ireland and the native Irish honeybee was set up in 2012. Actually, they had followed in the footsteps of Bibba and had learned a lot from Bibba. And I became familiar with the idea, the situation that, well, there are no black bees in Ireland left. They all got wiped out at the so-called Isle of Wight disease, and we've no wild bees left. And the ones that are saying they have black bees are lying, or the black bees are inbred and they're doing more damage, and there's nothing really to save. So really quite intriguing, but there was really no evidence, right? It was all anecdotal. There was a paper in 2005 by Jensen et al. That had shown we had black bees in Ireland and in England. And anyway, so that's what got me started. And I became a beekeeper so I could talk to beekeepers, because beekeepers are quite skeptical of scientists, or they were in Ireland anyway. And so I'd really understand the problems and be able to have the chat, because that's really important. And I became a beekeeper, and I was quite shy about my beekeeping, actually, because I'm a very lazy beekeeper. And anyway, but I have evolved like my bees. So I'm going to talk about the situation in Ireland. Okay, so what's the story? It's a phrase we have in Ireland. So I'm going to give you a whistle-stop tour. I'm not going to go into detail of how we did anything. I'll be around all day for questions or chat or anything like that. So this, oopsie doozes. So I'm going to talk about, this is collaborative work, because of course when I started, there was no point reinventing the wheel. There was people doing some of this stuff. So I collaborate with lots of people. And thankfully, it took a while to get funding for honeybees, because honeybees sometimes fall between two stools. The EPA type funding, conservation biologists actually don't really like honeybees because of the perceived impact on wild pollinators, forgetting that honeybees are wild pollinators as well. And also the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine are more interested in sheep and cattle. So it's actually quite hard to get started. So thanks to the likes of the Native Irish Honeybee Society, Eva Crane Trust has funded me small bits of money, and collaborating with people like Elise's group here that will be taught in the afternoon. And I collaborate with Bee Bites and everywhere to learn from everybody. And the game changer in Ireland, I think, was when NIBS and the Science connected with Green Party, Senator Vincent Martin there, and the Climate Bar Association to move forward the legislative petition. So, what do I want to talk about? Yeah, I'm having your problem, Mary. Anyway, so, yeah, I just want to, this is a basically bullet point of what I'm going to say. One is that we do have a black bee in Ireland, and it is not only there, but it's physically distinct from black bees in Europe, mainland Europe, because we're still part of Europe. They are genetically distinct. It is the preferred managed honeybee in the majority of beekeepers in Ireland. Hooray, and that's why I think we've managed to sustain this population. Beekeepers like the black bee for good reason. We have a widespread free-living population. They are no longer just feral escapees from apiaries. We have a widespread free-living population. I mentioned very briefly imports and hybridization risk and some of the initiatives that have been taken in Ireland to protect our bee, including legislation. So this might be, I think, really happy at how we've moved forward in Ireland, and I would love to see us move further together rather than us go backwards. We don't want to lose our black bee, but likewise, it would be really good to see the bee that is adapted to these islands to be sustained. So I want to talk about adaptation for a second, because adaptation is the key to all of this, really. And this is where the process of change by which an organism or species becomes better suited to its environment. This is a quote from a dictionary. And really, we need to think as beekeepers. So with my beekeeping, I am very hands-off. And really, honeybees are of a very close association with their environment. They use it for everything, right? And they're really sensitive animals. And even from an animal welfare perspective, we need to consider this adaptation of honeybees to their local environment. And the more we interfere with them, the less well they can become adapted. So from a geographical point of view, Mary pointed out the point about the subspecies, and this is the fact that in terms of adaptation, we have very different environments across the world and across Europe where the honeybee is, the western, oh, where's that? And bees will adapt to where they are. So as environments change, the bees will adapt to those environments over a period of time. And there hasn't really been work to look at how much time that takes. But the traits that have evolved in Apis mellifera that help us survive in cold, wet climates here in Ireland and the UK are not the traits that will help us survive in southern Italy, but likewise the traits of the ligustica bee that have allowed it to adapt to these places won't work, particularly in Ireland or England. And there's ligustica bees will produce a lot of honey in warm places like in Italy, but that doesn't mean they're going to produce a lot of honey here, or in the same way, or they may need to be propped up an awful lot in order to do that. The more you have to interfere with your bees to make them produce a lot of honey, the more removed they are from their natural situation, the more stressed they are. And really, I think we have to be thinking of bees as they are intelligent, social, highly sensitive animals that we treat sometimes as commodities. And really, we need to be looking at them from an animal welfare perspective, as well as just, they're for our good. And I suppose I'm preaching a lot to, there's a lot of hobbyist sorry. There are a lot of hobbyist beekeepers who don't really just think about this. And most beekeepers in England as well, and the UK, are hobbyists. And so we really should not be we should not be taking what's from the books coming from Europe. I've been really shocked about the density of honeybee colonies in Europe, where a lot of the teachings are coming from. And that's not what it's like in Ireland and the UK. Really, it isn't. And we should not be following those. We should be following our own, how we feel things should be, or what works for us. Anyway, so that's, sorry. Lecture over, I can sit down. So we realized a few years ago that actually we were trying to protect the Irish honeybee. And I was thinking, because I'm a systematist, so I use molecular biology to look at relationships between things. And I've worked on lots of different things, from HIV viruses to marine sponges and echinoderms. So I was thinking objectively here, well, what are we actually trying to protect? Is there anything different about the Irish bee? Because that's what the government are going to ask and whatever. So I got my student, Alex Valentine, who published this, and it's open access, so I'm not going to go into detail, but she worked hard for a couple of years, gathered over 500 colonies from beekeepers around Ireland, and really did painstaking work on different morphological traits. And we use bee bites. We work with bee bites to generate the SNP data. And we found, I was really gobsmacked and delighted, that the Irish Apis mellifera is significantly different from mainland European mellifera. Not only are they different from ligustica and carnica, they are different from other AMM. And I am pretty sure that the pure AMM in the UK will be like the Irish. The unique observations include short leg length, proboscis length, longer forewings, much lower cubital index, broad, like a dumpy bee, so broad and kind of and short. And we think that your own Derek Mitchell in Leeds has done some work, but it suggests that these traits are probably to do with overwintering, thermoregulation. The shorter legs mean that the festooning distances are shorter, and it's for airflow and so on, and the long hair as well. So we have a distinctly different bee. And actually we know, there's no scientific evidence, which I'd love to move on to next, to show the behavioural differences. We know, all beekeepers know, the behavioural differences between dark bees and non-native bees in terms of how frugal they are with their stores, how reactive they are to their environment. So they know when it's going to rain. So I know when it's going to rain, because if I'm watching my bees. But they stop bringing in stores, they stop using their stores, they go off late when the stores are not around. So actually even commercial beekeepers in Ireland that use AMM can generate as much honey as people who don't use AMM, because they know their bees and they work with their bees in the right timings. Native bees bring in a wad of honey very quickly, so you don't need rapid spring build-up if you just wait and be patient and let take the stuff when it comes. And then we don't have to feed our bees, because our bees stop laying when we don't have to feed them. Anyway, our native bee also is genetically distinct, so using genome data. So I'm not going to, this is just like a pedigree analysis, so it's using the more similar the bees are genetically, the more they're clustered together. So our Irish bees are very distinct. Interestingly, they are more similar to Iberiensis bees than they are to some of the other AMM across Europe, and this may point to the fact that AMM evolved from Iberiensis, and in Ireland, and this is the Isle of Man, that there is an Iberian flow of flora and fauna, other animals as well. So anyway, interesting evolutionary dynamics there, but we definitely have a distinct Irish population. And there is genomic differences across Ireland. Now this is a bit messy, we haven't looked more in this in a couple of years, but this is like a pedigree analysis. So again, where you've got a cluster of branches together, these all represent colonies, and it's genome data where you've got a single branch going in there, it represents a common ancestor of that group. So you see that there's lots of different clusters, and for some of them, like Donegal, the Donegal bees are very distinct. The pure bees are very distinct from the rest of the Republic of Ireland samples. We have the Louth bees are distinct, the Connemara bees are distinct, and the Tipperary bees have a cluster. So there is definitely locally, this is indicative of local adaptation, and it's messed up a little bit by people moving bees. And there is more and more of a movement now in Ireland to not move bees around. Even I've had bees come up from the southeast, and they all abscond or they die out really. And all my bees in my apiary now are local swarms and from wild colonies and local swarms that I don't mess with. So anyway, that's a movement in Ireland now really to, and if you're a commercial beekeeper selling nooks, that we tell our beginners to mind those bees. If you buy bees from far away, look after them really well for a couple of years so that they become adapted to your environment. Don't expect them to perform as the same way as they did in the native place. This is just a mitochondrial network, similar thing, and the real point is here is that we have a couple of very common variant haplotypes. Now, we don't know whether they are due to a lot of Dutch imports. They're identical to a Dutch haplotype. Do they represent a mass import back in the day after the so-called Isle of Wight disease? Or do they represent a haplotype that's actually got great fitness across Europe? But we have a lot of different. So the dark green is more recent samples. The light green are older samples from Ireland. The black dots are from Elise Pinto's paper of dark bee protected populations, and then we've a lot of other ones from the French crowd that published. So we have some that are like the French bees, we have some like European bees, and then we have a lot of diversity, a lot of mitochondrial diversity that's unique to Ireland. This slide is just to point to the fact that most beekeepers, I'm saying more than 80%, but it's more like 90% of beekeepers prefer AMM, and the reasons are really cool actually. I'm very proud of our Irish beekeepers, is that, you know, it's the conservation of the black bee, 81.6%. So this is a rating the preference, so 1 is not important and 5 is very important. So actually, even if you take 5 and 4, more than 95% of the beekeepers are using conservation as being really important because they're the best bee for my environment. People are aware of this, which is really lovely to see, and also that it's in the area. So this, again, is available. We did a little bit of work on surveying the Irish beekeepers. We're so lucky in Ireland as well, we have free-living colonies. You have them too. Not just feral colonies, you have a lot of free-living colonies. So Felipe is there, and Matt, and there's Joe Ibbotson doing work in the Boughton Estate and Ollie Vistic and stuff. So there's people now looking, and Jonathan Powell's group, you know. So there are a lot of, and Roger Patterson will talk about this quite a bit as well. So we're lucky though. In some places in England, the survival of the free-living colonies is poor. Because of the imports, because of the lack of local adaptation, this interruption that Jonathan was talking about happening, I think, more frequently than we have in Ireland. We have lower density of commercial beekeepers in Ireland, we have lower imports. But we have now, have over 750 nests that we've been recorded, and we're monitoring closely over 200 nests. We are doing genome sequencing of multiple times to show longevity. In terms of imports, historically, we've had very low imports in Ireland, which probably has allowed us to have the population we have. We have a very widespread population of AMM in Ireland, and it's probably due to this local adaptation and the lack of imports. As we've had this massive increase, and it does coincide with COVID. Now, I think that's probably oversimplistic. It does also coincide kind of with Brexit, but we had a massive increase in imports for a couple of years, and it seems to have died down a little bit. So we're going back. We seem to be going back to pre-COVID importation levels, which we're very happy about. but we're still getting consistent imports coming into certain key areas. There are very few people importing in Ireland, but they're importing queens and then selling them on to unsuspecting beginners. And there is people like buckfast bees, and there's a religious connection in Ireland between buckfast and beekeepers who are religious. There is that they like their buckfast. But actually, what is buckfast now? We find that a lot of buckfast has got a high proportion of AMM in it. So some importers have stopped because their importing are being polluted by AMM, but in some places it's obviously the other way around. So in the situation in Ireland, we did some work published in 2018, which showed at the time that about 95%, between 95 and 99% of beekeepers had black bees, but we were focused at that time on proving that AMM existed in Ireland. So we had a lot of beekeepers who thought they had black bees contribute to our data set. This time we put an open call to everybody across the country to send us in bees, and we genotyped these, and we found about 25% of them were hybridized. So this map, so it's very simply, on the map, where you've got black, it's AMM, and where you've got a grey colour, it's hybridization. But then the number, which you can see from there, the proportion here is over the whole, so on a county level, what proportion of the county were AMM. So even if here you've got almost a quarter of the colony sampled were hybridized, the overall value is 0.94, which is kind of that threshold of purity. So there's still a high level of purity. This is 0.95. Here, even though most of them are hybridized, is 0.92. So you do have places here where it's total hybridized bees, but there are very few colonies that were sampled in these. Dublin is an issue, very high hybridization. Dublin and Wexford, and Wicklow, sorry, Dublin and Wicklow are high, and of course Northern Ireland. What we have actually 88% are significantly hybridized, so under 90% AMM, and we have a huge proportion that are slightly hybridized, and we think it is, we have very few non-native queens surviving in the population, which leads us to believe that the imported, which we all know really, the imported queens, particularly from Italy, are not surviving. So the queens aren't surviving, but their drones are impacting the local population because their drones are hybridizing. There is some evidence to suggest that if provided with enough drones, that AMM queens are selected. There's some reproductive isolation mechanism. So if you can flood your drones, your areas with native drones, the queens would preferentially, we think, use those drones, but where they don't have an option, they'll mate outside. So yeah, we think the drones are having a big impact. So initiatives to protect AMM, the Native Irish Honeybee Society have been performing out of their stocks doing this. So the first thing is answering one of Mary's questions about not enough queens. So they have taken this on board, and now they have these queen rearing group schemes, which would be wonderful for you to start here, and just they give lectures on a weekly basis, and then they have these groups. So local associations would take on a group within about 10 people would take on rearing queens, and then they're available for beginners, and their local bees available for beginners. So this is a wonderful expertise to share, and it's working really well. I think they're producing thousands of queens now, and we're tracking them. They're using bee bites to track genotyping and all that. So it's really, really cool. A really good model to follow, probably, for BIBA. And then we have voluntary conservation areas, which started by the Galway, the Galtee bee breeding group way back with about 20 local beekeepers and associations. And now they have, I'm sure that this number has gone to multiple hundreds more, but I didn't get the time to follow up with that. But somebody will probably put it in the chat, how many hundreds are there. And these are areas that where only dark bees are allowed. Now, they was called voluntary, they've dropped voluntary, and they want them called conservation areas. They can range from a tree in a car park to somebody's back garden, to our university lands, to national parks, to large estates like the Mount Edgecombe estate yesterday. I mean, that is a great model to develop. We have them all over the country. And that actually not only creates areas that are habitats just for native bees, but it increases public awareness. Members of the public become aware of the signs, and it just helps that education piece. A game changer in Ireland, because you know, nibs have been banging on the door of the department for years to try and get some kind of protective measures. Senator Vincent Martin is a barrister, and he became a beekeeper, became aware of the issue, and he engaged this Climate Bar Association, which are a bunch of lawyers that do pro bono environmental work. And together with all of the scientific evidence we could gather and generate with the value of the lawyers to build, they developed this bill, which Vincent Martin brought to the Irish Seanad, so our upper house, as a private member's bill. And so that was introduced in October 2021. It was posed after 3 stages where the government sought more evidence, independent evidence, which a number of us here in the room were involved. So all of the speakers this morning really helps, and I'm really grateful for helping to do this independent piece of scientific evidence. A TD to bring it to the door, or else hopefully, you know, if enough government will support that endeavour. So really, I suppose the precautionary principle here is to protect it before you lose it, and this is really important. And you know what, the EU, well actually England, you're in a brilliant position actually for Brexit, because you're no longer part of the EU, so you can do what you want. In Ireland, you know, there is kind of a fear of doing it because of the international trade, but there are other regulations in the EU that expect member states to protect their biodiversity, and so, you know, we need to campaign. So yeah, that's where we're at the moment, and I'm just going to bring it back to bees and just use shot with my apiary, and really to encourage. I'm getting more confidence to speak out about me as a beekeeper, because I don't like caustic soda. I don't like chemicals. For me, I think chemicals are bad, and I don't use them. And I let the bees, and actually I don't know if I'm going to put a plug in for Steve Riley's book, the Honeybee Solution to Varroa. Buy it. It's not expensive, and it's really nice to read, and I'm following that protocol at the moment. I'm looking at my bottom boards every week, and I'm, anyway, I let the bees do what the bees do. I have a mix of colonies that some have now fully bred. Oh my God, she's using natural boxes, and anyway, they're grand, my bees are grand. And I have chalk brood, I have a lot of Nosema serene, I have lots of varroa in some colonies, and I have very little in other colonies. I have uncapping behaviour, I don't have recapping behaviour, so because I have chalk brood, they take out the they uncap and remove the pupae or whatever. So anyway, yeah, I just like to let the bees be, and I have to manage swarming to some extent, because the university will get into trouble if my swarms go into the city. But if I see they want to swarm, I will split them. Other than that, they're left to their own devices. And I haven't treated ever. So some of these, the ones I took up from the southeast died. So now I don't. Some of these are swarms that have come into the apiary, or I have another apiary as well. This one is this is a mega colony from a tree. In 2018, I caught a swarm from the tree, and that we were monitoring, and that one is the mother of quite a lot of my colony. Well, the grandmother or great-grandmother now at this point, but a fabulous colony that is prolific, produces plenty of honey, too much for them actually, and I get some of it then. Yeah, so I think we let the bees be bees, and because this is about sustainable beekeeping, it's not just about imports, right? So I think natural beekeeping is kind of a nice way to go, and it's a good way to go for the bees in terms of let them do their business. Anyway, yeah, so that's me. Thank you very much for listening, and yeah. Oh yeah, sorry, I did have another slide just to summarize all that rambling, but I think for me, you know, just to point out here that not to be afraid of free-living colonies, because actually we've done some work. We'll publish this year. My student Alex again, her next thing is we screened 93 colonies, managed treatment-free and free-living for 16 different pests and pathogens. We only found 9, so we have a lot of, we don't have some of the stuff you have, but the free-living, there was no significant difference between free-living colonies and the managed colonies in terms of the presence, absence of all these diseases. So obviously, You do have some that have disease, you have some that don't. So I would just take them, and if you're afraid to stop treating, get a swarm from your local area and don't treat that, and start that way and then move over. Anyway, so that's where we are. Thank you very much. Bye.